Guess what? Where on earth would you find an island so rich in history that it contains 8 UNESCO World Heritage Sites within a landmass smaller than Ireland? A place where ancient Buddhist kingdoms built monuments rivaling anything in Southeast Asia, where colonial powers fought for control across 4 centuries, and where one of the most brutal civil wars of the late 20th century raged for nearly 3 decades. In the scattered islands of Indonesia, along the coasts of Thailand or Vietnam, perhaps in the Philippines with its complex colonial history? No, all wrong. The island that packs more history, more tragedy, more beauty, and more complexity per square kilometer than almost anywhere else on Earth hangs like a teardrop from the southern tip of India. That island is Sri Lanka, and the teardrop shape is no accident. This land has wept for centuries. When most people think of Sri Lanka, they conjure images of tropical beaches, elephant sanctuaries, and terraced tea plantations cascading down misty hillsides. They imagine ancient temples, smiling faces, and the kind of paradise that fills travel brochures and Instagram feeds. All of this exists. All of this is real. But beneath the surface of this paradise lies a wound that has not fully healed. From 1983 to 2009, Sri Lanka tore itself apart in a civil war that killed between 80,000 and 100,000 people. Entire communities were displaced. Atrocities were committed by multiple sides. Scars that no amount of tropical beauty can entirely conceal remain visible to those who know where to look. This is the story of an island shaped by ancient glory and modern tragedy. A journey through landscapes of breathtaking beauty and histories of heartbreaking violence. A land where Buddhism preaches compassion while memories of war persist. Where recovery is real but reconciliation remains incomplete. Welcome to Travel Vibes. Sri Lanka occupies an island of approximately 65,610 square kilometers in the Indian Ocean. Separated from the Indian subcontinent by the Poke Strait, a narrow channel only 50 kilometers wide at its closest point. This proximity to India has defined Sri Lanka's history. Waves of migration, invasion, trade, and cultural exchange have flowed across these waters for over 2 millennia. Yet the island developed a distinct identity, shaped by its geography, its religions, and its particular blend of peoples. The terrain varies dramatically within this compact space. Central highlands rise to peaks exceeding 2,500 meters. Their slopes covered with the tea plantations that became synonymous with Ceylon, as the island was known during British rule. Dry plains dominate the north and east, their ancient irrigation systems testifying to the engineering achievements of early kingdoms. Tropical rainforests cling to the wet southwestern lowlands. Beaches ring nearly the entire coastline. This geographic diversity created ecological niches that supported remarkable biodiversity. Sri Lanka is recognized as one of the world's biodiversity hotspots, with high concentrations of endemic species found nowhere else on Earth. Elephants, leopards, and hundreds of bird species inhabit forests and wetlands that have survived despite centuries of human pressure. The population of approximately 22 million divides along ethnic and religious lines that became tragically significant during the Civil War. Sinhalese, predominantly Buddhist, comprise about 75% of the population. Tamils, predominantly Hindu, comprise about 15%, concentrated historically in the north and east. Moors, or Sri Lankan Muslims, comprise about 9%. Smaller communities of Burghers, Malays, and indigenous Vedas complete the mosaic. Understanding how these communities came to share this island, and how that sharing broke down so catastrophically, requires journeying back through millennia of history. The earliest inhabitants of Sri Lanka were the Vedas indigenous people, whose ancestors may have arrived over 30,000 years ago. Their descendants survive today in small numbers. Their traditional hunting and gathering lifestyle largely replaced by settled agriculture. According to the Mahavamsa, the great chronicle of Sinhalese history compiled by Buddhist monks, the founder of the Sinhalese people was Prince Vijaya, who arrived from India in the 6th century BCE with 700 followers. Whether literal history or founding myth, this story establishes the connection between the Sinhalese and the Indian subcontinent while asserting a distinct identity. Buddhism arrived in the 3rd century BCE, brought according to tradition by Mahinda, son of the Indian Emperor Ashoka. The conversion of the Sinhalese king Devanampiya Tissa marked the beginning of Sri Lanka as identity as a Buddhist nation, an identity that remains central to Sinhalese consciousness today. The ancient kingdoms that followed, centered first at Anuradhapura and later at Polonnaruwa, created monuments of remarkable scale and sophistication. Massive stupas, intricate irrigation systems, and elaborate royal complexes testify to the wealth and organizational capacity of these Buddhist kingdoms. Tamil presence in Sri Lanka also dates back millennia. Tamil kingdoms in South India maintained close connections with the island, sometimes ruling portions of it, sometimes trading with it, sometimes fighting against it. The Tamil kingdom of Jaffna in the north established an independent polity that persisted for centuries. The relationship between Sinhalese and Tamil communities was not always hostile. Periods of conflict alternated with periods of coexistence, intermarriage, and cultural exchange. The rigid ethnic boundaries that later generations would kill and die over were not fixed categories in the ancient period, yet the seeds of future conflict were present. Competition for land, water, and political power created tensions that various rulers exploited or managed depending on circumstances. The memory of Tamil invasions embedded itself in Sinhalese historical consciousness. Just as memories of Sinhalese expansion embedded themselves in Tamil consciousness, when European colonizers arrived, they inherited and deepened these divisions in ways that would prove catastrophic. The Portuguese reached Sri Lanka in 1505, beginning over 4 centuries of European colonial rule. They came seeking cinnamon, a precious spice that grew wild in Sri Lankan forests and commanded extraordinary prices in European markets. They established coastal trading posts, converted portions of the population to Catholicism, and introduced firearms that transformed local warfare. The Dutch replaced the Portuguese in the mid-17th century, driven by the same commercial motives. They expanded cinnamon cultivation, developed the legal system, and left architectural and cultural traces visible in cities like Gaul to this day. The British displaced the Dutch during the Napoleonic Wars, taking control of the coastal regions by 1796 and conquering the Kandyan Kingdom in the interior by 1815. For the first time in over 2 millennia, the entire island fell under a single foreign ruler. British policies reshaped Sri Lankan society in ways that reverberate today. They established coffee and later tea plantations in the Central Highlands, importing Tamil laborers from South India to work them. These Indian Tamils, or estate Tamils, became a distinct community from the Sri Lankan Tamils, whose ancestors had lived in the north for centuries. Both would later face discrimination that denied their full belonging in the nation. The British also implemented dividend rule strategies common throughout their empire. They favored certain communities for administrative positions, distributed resources unequally, and cultivated ethnic consciousness that served colonial control. English-educated elites emerged who would lead the independence movement but also inherit colonial ethnic categories. When independence came in 1948, it came peacefully, without the violent struggle that marked decolonization elsewhere. This peaceful transition was celebrated at the time. It would later be seen as a missed opportunity to forge a genuinely inclusive national identity through shared struggle. The decades following independence saw the gradual marginalization of Tamil communities and the rise of Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism. Buddhism arrived in the 3rd century BCE, brought according to tradition by Mahinda, son of the Indian Emperor Ashoka. The conversion of the Sinhalese king Devanampiya Tissa marked the beginning of Sri Lanka as identity as a Buddhist nation, an identity that remains central to Sinhalese consciousness today. The ancient kingdoms that followed, centered first at Anuradhapura and later at Polonnaruwa, created monuments of remarkable scale and sophistication. Massive stupas, intricate irrigation systems, and elaborate royal complexes testify to the wealth and organizational capacity of these Buddhist kingdoms. Tamil presence in Sri Lanka also dates back millennia. Tamil kingdoms in South India maintained close connections with the island, sometimes ruling portions of it, sometimes trading with it, sometimes fighting against it. The Tamil kingdom of Jaffna in the north established an independent polity that persisted for centuries. The relationship between Sinhalese and Tamil communities was not always hostile. Periods of conflict alternated with periods of coexistence, intermarriage, and cultural exchange. The rigid ethnic boundaries that later generations would kill and die over were not fixed categories in the ancient period, yet the seeds of future conflict were present. Competition for land, water, and political power created tensions that various rulers exploited or managed depending on circumstances. The memory of Tamil invasions embedded itself in Sinhalese historical consciousness. Just as memories of Sinhalese expansion embedded themselves in Tamil consciousness, when European colonizers arrived, they inherited and deepened these divisions in ways that would prove catastrophic. The Portuguese reached Sri Lanka in 1505, beginning over 4 centuries of European colonial rule. They came seeking cinnamon, a precious spice that grew wild in Sri Lankan forests and commanded extraordinary prices in European markets. They established coastal trading posts, converted portions of the population to Catholicism, and introduced firearms that transformed local warfare. The Dutch replaced the Portuguese in the mid-17th century, driven by the same commercial motives. They expanded cinnamon cultivation, developed the legal system, and left architectural and cultural traces visible in cities like Gaul to this day. The British displaced the Dutch during the Napoleonic Wars, taking control of the coastal regions by 1796 and conquering the Kandyan Kingdom in the interior by 1815. For the first time in over 2 millennia, the entire island fell under a single foreign ruler. British policies reshaped Sri Lankan society in ways that reverberate today. These Indian Tamils, or estate Tamils, became a distinct community from the Sri Lankan Tamils, whose ancestors had lived in the north for centuries. Both would later face discrimination that denied their full belonging in the nation. The British also implemented divide and rule strategies common throughout their empire. They favored certain communities for administrative positions, distributed resources unequally, and cultivated ethnic consciousness that served colonial control. English-educated elites emerged who would lead the independence movement, but also inherit colonial ethnic categories. When independence came in 1948, it came peacefully, without the violent struggle that marked decolonization elsewhere. This peaceful transition was celebrated at the time. It would later be seen as a missed opportunity to forge a genuinely inclusive national identity through shared struggle. The decades following independence saw the gradual marginalization of Tamil communities and the rise of Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism. In 1956, the government of SWRD Bandarniki passed the Sinhala-only Act, making Sinhala the sole official language and effectively barring Tamils from government employment unless they learned a language foreign to them. The act was popular among Sinhalese voters, but catastrophic for ethnic relations. Anti-Tamil riots followed the language law and recurred periodically over subsequent decades. In 1958, 1977, and most devastatingly in 1983, mobs attacked Tamil neighborhoods, businesses, and individuals, while security forces stood by or participated. The 1983 riots, known as Black July, marked the effective beginning of the Civil War. Following the killing of 13 soldiers by Tamil militants, organized mobs rampaged through Colombo and other cities, killing thousands of Tamils, destroying homes and businesses, and creating a refugee crisis that scattered the Tamil population across the globe. For many Tamils, Black July demonstrated that coexistence within a unified Sri Lanka was impossible. Support for armed separatism, previously limited to small militant groups, surged. The Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, known as the LTTE or Tamil Tigers, emerged as the dominant militant organization. Its goal the creation of an independent Tamil state called Tamil Eelam in the north and east. What followed was 26 years of brutal conflict. The LTTE pioneered tactics that would later become associated with terrorist organizations worldwide. The Sri Lankan government and military responded with tactics that themselves drew international condemnation. Extrajudicial killings, forced disappearances, and attacks on Tamil civilians became common. The distinction between combatant and civilian blurred as both sides committed atrocities. The war displaced over 1 million people, it destroyed infrastructure across the north and east, it created a generation who knew nothing but conflict. It scarred the national psyche in ways that persist today. The war ended in May 2009 with the military defeat of the LTTE and the death of its leader, Philupalai. The final months of the conflict remained deeply controversial. Government forces pushed the LTTE into an ever-shrinking area of the northeast, trapping hundreds of thousands of civilians in the combat zone. Estimates of civilian deaths during this final offensive range from 40,000 to over 100,000, with accusations of war crimes leveled against both the government forces and the LTTE. The government declared victory. Sinhalese celebrations filled the streets of Colombo. For many, the defeat of an organization that had terrorized the nation for decades brought genuine relief. For Tamils, particularly those in the north and east, the end of the war brought different emotions. Relief at the cessation of fighting mixed with grief for the dead, fear of the occupying military, and uncertainty about what peace would actually mean. The years since 2009 have seen genuine reconstruction alongside persistent tensions. Infrastructure has been rebuilt. Roads now connect areas that were inaccessible during the conflict. Hotels and guest houses have opened in areas once off limits to travelers. Tourism has become a major industry in regions that knew only war for a generation, but reconciliation remains incomplete. Thousands of disappeared persons have never been accounted for. Land seized during the conflict has not been fully returned. Military presence in Tamil areas remains heavy. The political aspirations that drove Tamil support for separatism have not been addressed through meaningful devolution of power. The wounds have not fully healed. The bleeding, though slower, continues. Colombo, the commercial capital and largest city, offers a complex portrait of modern Sri Lanka. Approximately 3 million people inhabit the greater Colombo metropolitan area, making it the dominant urban center of the island. The city sprawls along the western coast, its neighborhoods reflecting the layers of history that have shaped Sri Lanka. The Fort District, despite its name, no longer contains the colonial fortifications that once defined it today. It serves as the financial and commercial heart of the city. Its streets lined with banks, corporate headquarters, and government buildings. Colonial-era structures, some beautifully preserved and others crumbling, stand alongside modern towers. Petta, adjacent to Fort, explodes with commercial energy that contrasts sharply with the corporate formality of its neighbor. This is Colombo at its most chaotic and vital. Vendors hawk everything from electronics to spices in streets so crowded that vehicles barely move. The diversity of Sri Lanka is visible here, with Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, and Christian places of worship standing in close proximity. The Gangaramaya Temple, one of Colombo's most important Buddhist sites, exemplifies the eclectic character of Sri Lankan Buddhism. The complex incorporates architectural elements from multiple Asian traditions. Its museum displaying a remarkable collection of religious artifacts gathered from across the Buddhist world. The Jamio Lalfar Mosque, its distinctive red and white striped facade, recognizable from across the Petta, represents the Muslim community whose presence in Sri Lanka dates back over a millennium. Built in 1909, it has become one of Colombo's most photographed structures. Independence Square commemorates the peaceful transition from colonial rule, its monument and surrounding parks offering green space amid urban density. The architecture self-consciously references the Kandyan kingdom, asserting continuity between pre-colonial glory and the modern nation. Yet Colombo also bears scars that more recent visitors may not recognize. The central bank bombing of 1996, carried out by the LTTE, killed nearly 100 people and devastated the financial district. The area has been rebuilt, but those who remember can still trace the blast's impact. The 2019 Easter bombings, carried out by Islamist extremists targeting churches and hotels, killed over 250 people. The attacks shattered the sense that the end of the civil war had brought lasting peace, revealing new fault lines in Sri Lankan society. Colombo persists. It grows, changes, and adapts. But it carries memories that complicate simple narratives of recovery. The cultural triangle of north-central Sri Lanka contains the island's greatest archaeological treasures. Anuradhapura, the first great capital of Sinhalese civilization, served as the seat of power for over a millennium. From the 4th century BCE to the 11th century CE, during this immense span, the city grew into one of the largest urban centers in the ancient world, its monuments testifying to the devotion and resources of successive Buddhist kingdoms. The Ruanwalasaya Stupa, originally constructed in the 2nd century BCE, rises over 100 meters, its white dome dominating the landscape. Rebuilt multiple times over the centuries, it remains one of the most sacred sites in Theravada Buddhism, attracting pilgrims from across the Buddhist world. The Sri Mahabodhi, the sacred fig tree that grows at Anuradhapura, holds a claim unmatched by any other living thing on earth. According to tradition, it was grown from a cutting of the original Bodhi tree under which the Buddha achieved enlightenment, brought to Sri Lanka by Sanghamitta, daughter of Emperor Ashoka, in the 3rd century BC. If this tradition is accurate, it is the oldest living tree with a known planting date in human history. The scale of ancient Anuradhapura is staggering. The ruins spread across approximately 40 square kilometers, with stupas, monasteries, palaces, and irrigation works scattered throughout. UNESCO designated the site a World Heritage Property in 1982, recognizing its outstanding universal value. Polonnaruwa, the second ancient capital, succeeded Anuradhapura following invasions from South India. The city flourished from the 11th to the 13th centuries, its monuments reflecting both continuity with earlier traditions and new artistic influences. The Gal Vihara, a group of 4 Buddha statues carved from a single granite rock face, represents the pinnacle of Sinhalese sculpture. The reclining Buddha, over 14 meters long, depicts the moment of the Buddha's passing into nirvana with serenity that continues to move visitors centuries later. The audience hall of King Parakramabu features columns carved to resemble lions, creating an architectural ensemble that demonstrates the sophistication of medieval Sinhalese design. The irrigation works he constructed, including the vast Parakrama Samudra Reservoir, remain in use today. UNESCO inscribed Polonnaruwa as a World Heritage Site in 1982, alongside Anuradhapura, recognizing the two capitals as testimonies to Sinhalese Buddhist civilization. Rising from the Central Plains, Sigiriya presents one of the most dramatic archaeological sites in all of Asia. This massive rock formation, approximately 200 meters high, served as the fortress and palace of King Kashyapa in the 5th century CE. According to the chronicles, Kashyapa killed his father to seize the throne, then built this impregnable citadel, fearing revenge from his brother. The engineering required to transform a natural rock formation into a functioning palace complex demonstrates capabilities that continue to impress modern observers. Water gardens, boulder gardens, and terraced gardens cascade down the lower slopes. Staircases climb through the rock itself. At the summit, the remains of the palace preserve the footprint of a residence designed for both pleasure and defense. Midway up the ascent, the famous Sigiriya frescoes depict celestial maidens in a style that has become iconic of Sri Lankan art, protected by a sheltered pocket in the rock face. These paintings have survived for over 1,500 years, their colors still vibrant against the stone. The mirror wall, a polished surface that once reflected images of visitors ascending to the summit, bears ancient graffiti dating back over 1,000 years. These inscriptions, poems, and comments comprise one of the oldest surviving collections of secular writing in Sri Lanka. UNESCO designated Sigiriya a World Heritage Site in 1982, recognizing both its archaeological significance and its aesthetic achievement. The combination of natural formation and human transformation creates a monument unlike any other. The rock looms over the surrounding landscape, visible from kilometers away. Approaching it, visitors confront the ambition and paranoia of a king who built his palace in the sky and awaited an attack that eventually came. Kashyapa died in battle against his brother. The palace was abandoned, Nature slowly reclaimed what human hands had built, yet Sigiriya endures. The rock cannot be destroyed. The engineering remains visible. The frescoes still gaze down upon those who make the climb. The Temple of the Tooth and Candy houses what is believed to be a tooth relic of the Buddha himself. According to tradition, the tooth was taken from the Buddha's funeral pyre, and eventually brought to Sri Lanka in the 4th century CE, hidden in the hair of a princess fleeing conflict in India. Since then, it has been the most sacred object in Sri Lankan Buddhism, its possession conferring legitimacy upon whoever holds it. The temple complex, known as the Sri Dalada Maligawa, sits beside Kandy Lake in the heart of the city that served as the last independent Sinhalese kingdom. The Kandyan kingdom resisted European colonization for over 3 centuries before finally falling to the British in 1815. 3 times daily, rituals are performed in the inner chamber where the relic is housed. Pilgrims crowd into the temple, bringing offerings of flowers and incense. The atmosphere is one of intense devotion, the air heavy with fragrance and the sound of drumming. UNESCO inscribed the sacred city of Kandy as a World Heritage Site in 1988, recognizing its importance as the last capital of the Sinhalese kings and the continuing religious significance of the Temple of the Tooth. The annual Isala Perahera, held in July or August, ranks among the grandest religious festivals in Asia. For 10 nights, processions of elephants, dancers, drummers, and fire performers wind through Kandy's streets. The sacred tooth carried in a golden casket atop the largest elephant. The festival draws hundreds of thousands of participants and has continued, with interruptions during the worst years of conflict, for centuries. Kandy represents the heart of Sinhalese Buddhist identity. The temple, the rituals, the festivals all reinforce the connection between nation, religion, and people that defines how many Sinhalese understand themselves. This identity, so central to those who hold it, became part of the problem during the Civil War. The equation of Sri Lanka, with Sinhalese Buddhism, left Tamils, Hindus, Muslims, and Christians uncertain of their place in the national story. The hill country of central Sri Lanka presents landscapes that seem to belong to a different world than the tropical lowlands. When British colonizers introduced tea cultivation in the 19th century, they transformed the central highlands from dense forest into the orderly green carpets that now define the region. Rows of tea bushes follow the contours of steep hillsides, their geometric patterns creating visual rhythms that stretch to every horizon. The town of Nuwara Eliya, at an elevation of nearly 1,900 meters, became a retreat for British colonizers seeking relief from lowland heat. They built cottages, clubs, and gardens that recreated English landscapes in tropical latitudes. The town retains this colonial character, its red-roofed buildings and manicured lawns incongruous amid the surrounding mountains. The workers who harvest tea come predominantly from the Tamil community, descended from laborers imported from South India during the colonial period. These estate Tamils, or Indian Tamils, occupied an ambiguous position in Sri Lankan society, denied citizenship for decades after independence. Their labor essential to the economy, but their belonging questioned. Their conditions have improved since the worst discriminations were lifted. But tea workers remain among the poorest communities in Sri Lanka. The beauty of the tea country exists because of their labor, performed for wages that barely sustain life. Train journeys through the hill country offer some of the most spectacular travel experiences in Asia. The route from Kandy to Ella passes through tunnels, over bridges, and along ridges that offer views across valleys carpeted in green. The journey is slow, the trains old, and the scenery unforgettable. Ella itself has become a major tourist destination. Its relaxed atmosphere and natural beauty, attracting backpackers and more affluent travelers alike. The Nine Arches Bridge, built during the British period without steel reinforcement, has become one of Sri Lanka's most photographed sites. Adams Peak, rising to 2,243 meters in the southern hill country, draws pilgrims from multiple faiths. Buddhists believe the footprint at the summit was left by the Buddha. Hindus attribute it to Shiva. Christians and Muslims associate it with Adam's first step after expulsion from Eden. The climb begins in darkness, pilgrims ascending by flashlight to reach the summit for sunrise. The shadow of the peak, cast across the lowlands as the sun rises, creates a near-perfect triangle that seems to float above the mist. The experience transcends any single religious tradition, connecting participants to something larger than doctrine. The beaches of Sri Lanka's southern and eastern coasts have become major tourism destinations, their development accelerating dramatically since the war's end. Marissa, on the southern coast, has evolved from a fishing village into a beach resort, catering to international travelers. Whale watching has become a major attraction, with blue whales, the largest animals ever to exist, regularly spotted in the waters offshore. Unawatuna, near the colonial city of Galle, offers sheltered swimming and a more developed tourism infrastructure. The Crescent Beach, protected by a reef, provides calmer waters than the open ocean beaches elsewhere. Arugam Bay, on the eastern coast, has become Sri Lanka's premier surfing destination. For decades, the east coast was inaccessible due to the conflict. Since the war's end, development has accelerated, bringing both economic opportunity and environmental pressure to communities that had lived in isolation. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami devastated Sri Lanka's coastal communities, killing over 30,000 people and displacing hundreds of thousands more. The eastern and southern coasts bore the brunt of the destruction, with entire villages swept away by waves that reached over 10 meters in some locations. The tsunami struck during the conflict, creating a humanitarian crisis that briefly brought the warring parties together. International aid flowed in, reconstruction began, and hopes arose that shared suffering might enable lasting peace. It was not to be, but war resumed, more brutal than before. The final offensive would come 5 years later, bringing different devastation to different communities. Today, the beaches show few visible traces of the tsunami. New hotels and guest houses have replaced what was destroyed. Tourism has recovered and expanded. But those who survived remember, and memorial monuments scattered along the coast ensure that visitors know what happened here. Jaffna, the cultural capital of Sri Lankan Tamils, is accessible once again after decades of war. The city lies at the northern tip of the island, the center of a peninsula that was the heartland of Tamil civilization in Sri Lanka. For nearly 30 years, Jaffna was a war zone, its population displaced, its buildings destroyed, and its cultural institutions devastated. The Jaffna Public Library, destroyed by Sinhalese mobs in 1981 in one of the acts of cultural violence that preceded the Civil War, has been rebuilt. The original library, containing over 97,000 books and manuscripts, including irreplaceable Tamil literary and historical texts, represented one of the largest libraries in South Asia. The new library cannot replace what was lost. The manuscripts, some dating back centuries, are gone forever, but the rebuilding represented a commitment to Tamil cultural preservation that carries profound symbolic weight. Wildlife conservation in Sri Lanka presents both remarkable achievements and ongoing challenges. Yala National Park, in the southeast, is famous for having one of the highest densities of leopards anywhere in the world. The park's dry zone habitat supports populations of elephants, crocodiles, water buffalo, and hundreds of bird species. Minoria National Park hosts the gathering, one of the largest concentrations of wild Asian elephants on Earth. During the dry season, herds numbering in the hundreds congregate around the ancient reservoir, creating a spectacle that draws visitors and researchers from across the globe. Deforestation continues despite protected area designations. The pressure of a growing population on a small island creates tensions that conservation efforts struggle to resolve. Balancing these needs against conservation goals tests governance capacity. Sri Lanka's natural heritage is both genuinely remarkable and genuinely threatened. The beauty is real, so is the vulnerability. On an island shaped like a teardrop, suspended between the past and the future, the work of healing continues. Sri Lanka cannot undo what happened during the 30 years of war. The dead cannot be brought back. The displaced cannot be returned to homes that no longer exist. The traumas cannot be erased from individual and collective memory, but the living continue to live. Fishermen launch boats from beaches that were once no-go zones. Farmers tend fields that were once minefields. Children attend schools and buildings that were once military installations. The foreign visitors who come for beaches, temples, and wildlife also bring currency, employment, and contact with the outside world that decades of conflict restricted. Yet tourism cannot solve the underlying issues that caused the war and that persist in its aftermath. Political power remains concentrated in ways that leave minority communities feeling vulnerable. The international community has called for accountability and reconciliation. Domestic political dynamics have resisted meaningful progress. The wounds remain open, even as the surface appears increasingly healed. Sri Lanka's tragedy is not unique. Across the world, societies emerging from conflict face similar challenges. The tension between justice and stability, between memory and forgetting, between addressing the past and building the future, these are universal dilemmas. What is unique is the island itself. This particular combination of ancient heritage and modern trauma, this specific landscape of sacred sites and killing fields, this teardrop hanging from the tip of India, beautiful and bloodied, recovering and remembering. The beaches are open. The temples welcome pilgrims. The wildlife thrives in protected parks. The trains win through tea country. The ancient cities preserve monuments of vanished kingdoms. Memories of war, loss, displacement, and survival. Memories that complicate simple stories of paradise found. Sri Lanka is not only its tragedy, but it is not only its beauty either. It is both, inseparably. The teardrop falls. The bleeding slows but does not stop. Thank you for joining us throughout today's journey on Travel Vibes.